Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today y Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're very excited to have you joining us on a beautiful morning here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It is warm. It is sunny. But if you want to get out of the perfecto. But if you want to get out of the heat, this is a perfect time to just get into a nice cool spot, turn on your computer, watch some Today y Mañana, and enjoy it with. We would suggest a café con leche. If you want a chilled one, that's perfectly acceptable. But there you have it.
We give you permission to have a chilled café con leche.
You have official permission to do a chilled café con leche this morning. And so we've got a great lineup for you today. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to be joined very shortly on the show by Alexandra Solórzano. She is the owner of Owl Consultancy Group. Then later on, we're going to welcome back our good friend Matthias of Matthias Realty, bringing on another friend, Michelle Good of Intercoastal Mortgage. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to be joined by Daniela Mack, Argentine Mezzo-Soprano masterclass teacher, as well as Emily Hughes, Mezzo-Soprano, and emerging artist here.
Just a quick question here, and then I'll give you my line because I remembered. So don't say anything.
Yeah.
I don't say anything. But so why do you say Argentine instead of Argentine? Is that the appropriate way?
I have no idea. Just the way I pronounce things very badly.
I'm just curious.
I pronounce things very badly. So
yeah. No, you
can't.
You are one of the few people who pronounce anything badly. I'm the one that I'm just curious. I just wanted to know because I would say Argentine. I
saw it and I read it.
You know, I guess me because I say Argentina, so it's Argentina.
Well, that's how it was on the Today Mañana Facebook thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to roll with this.
All right, just
well, I got to really emphasize, think about it. We got the Today Mañana sort of emphasize Cubano. Alexandra's going to be Nicaragueña. I hope that's right. And then Argentina. And Matthias was in Nicaragua for a while. So, he's like honorary.
So we're doing the show in Spanish, what you're trying to tell me?
Exactly, the whole show, surprise.
The whole thing.
Surprise, the whole thing's in Spanish. No, I'm just kidding. But speaking of Spanish, we got our good friend Johnny Ornelas, amigo del programa, liking and sharing the show this morning.
Buenos dias.
Fantastic owner of El Mariachi.
Yes.
On Zion's Crossroads, so he's amazing. We love him on the show. Sydney Chakalos watching the show this morning. Thank you for joining us. So it's already everybody lining up.
Well, once you said who's going to be here, holy cow!
Once they heard the lineup, they said, "How can you miss?" How can you miss this?
Plus, you got the old guy back. Really.
There's probably like two people in our audience.
Two. That's all we need is two.
I'm sure Mrs. Urpí missed you. So that's she probably now that she knows
not
you're
today,
on, she's not watching.
Not today.
So
I'm sure.
What can you say? You got Dr. Elizabeth Urpí watching the show this morning.
All right.
So thank you very much.
And don't forget to like and share and subscribe.
Send us any questions, comments.
Oh, please, definitely.
Tell us how much you love our desks. We know that you do, for sure. So be sure to send that our way because it's gonna be fantastic. So I don't know about you, but I'm very excited to.
Well, no, absolutely. The way you introduce Alexandra and what she does, I don't know, so I'm very interested.
It's pretty exciting. I'm interested to find out a lot more. So let's jump right into it. We are super excited to welcome to the show this morning Alexandra Solórzano. She is the owner of Owl Consultancy Group. Alexandra, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
No, it's great to have you on. Great to have you on. So to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started Owl Consultancy and what it is. I think when you describe it, people are going to be really interested.
Okay, so let's start with the boring part, right? Went to UVA. I'm originally from Nicaragua, so I think just to give a little bit of context and Xavier over here probably knows this best, but in Latin America, the rule of law is not a thing. Like rules are a guideline. So I guess I always grew up with that sense of rules are meant to be broken. So back to the boring, went to UVA, specialized in Latin American corruption, did my career in law firms. I'm not a lawyer, but I kind of like the way the things ended up working out was I meet this lady who would go to my printing job. I hated my job, but little did I know that she actually had a lot of power in the firm, and to me, she was the coolest person. So I ended up sliding news articles under her door, got her into an event with like the vice president of Colombia, then got us invited to like a meeting with the ambassador of Colombia to the OAS. All of this while I'm billing overtime and not actually doing my real job. So, so needless to say, I almost got fired, but I didn't because, as I said, I didn't know she had power. And then she just said, Alexandra works for me now, and she came up to me and said, I'm going to make you an anti-money laundering specialist. And young me is like, cool, let's do it, right? Not knowing what the hell that even meant. I guess I always had a fascination for the dirty. So long story short, I stayed with her for about 5-ish, 6 years, get to the top of my career. That's where I'm fine-tuning the craft of like really digging into things, learning how to do like deep dive investigations, like web scraping, SQL, link analysis. It was just one of those like just trying to push the boundaries as much as possible. I decided that I don't want to become a lawyer, so I ended up going to this consulting firm, which ended up being an auditing firm, and you never put an investigator to do audits. It doesn't go well. So eventually I just said, you know what, like I'm at the point of my career where I just really want to be doing what I'm doing, and I don't think anybody has the answer. I'm sick and tired of hearing the industry saying this, like, you know, there's criminals, we need to stop criminals, we need to catch criminals, but everybody's doing the exact same thing over and over again. So I just said, like, you know what, the system is just broken, so screw it, let me just start my own thing. And that's literally how the OWL came into existence. And it coincided with a former boss of mine calling me and saying, hey, I need your investigative skills, but I can't hire you as an employee. Do you want the contract under your name or under a business? And that was the light bulb moment.
Wow, exactly.
But it honestly, like, to me, it was like, oh, why am I doing things post-tax if I can do them pre-tax? Right? But then, like, I came back to Charlottesville because, you know, the UVA connection, and I'm so glad that I came here because I think surface level people don't really realize how much Charlottesville has to offer. And the more I'm here, the more I get to meet amazing people like yourself, people like Miss Shelley you're going to have on your show, Matthias, and everybody has something very, very unique to share. And it's very interesting. It's a very interesting place to be because it's not one of those places where, oh, it's like there's one industry that predominates. I think it has a lot of diversity of like industries. So it's really interesting. So now going to what on earth is the OWL, right?
Yeah, I know. So when you read the website, you're like,
tell me exactly what that is.
This is like some pretty hefty stuff here.
So let me tell you a little bit of the reason, like why the name, right? Like, so for me, I've always been a believer that the eyes are the window to the soul. Like, you can fake everything, but you cannot fake the eyes. And I always thought it was cocky to put my name on it. So I started thinking, I said, what animal has that piercing look? And that's when like the owl came. And it's because the owl is like one of the most fierce and ferocious hunters, but it operates in the shadows. It's almost invisible. If you realize, like, you only know the owl is there if it lets you know it's there, right? Exactly. And that has actually become kind of like our operating ethos in a way. We like to be that silent partner because we like to get really dirty into the investigations like embezzlement cases, which sadly enough happen more often than what you would think. International trade, but when I say international trade, we're talking about, like, say, like identifying if there's forced labor in your supply chain, if there's like some form of sanctions evasion going on, any potential export control violations, such as like, you know, like selling to a bad guy, you know, like it happens more often than not. Like the days of you trusting your neighbor and doing that handshake are long gone. You don't know who people really are.
Especially if the person you're dealing with may be on the other side of the world in a global economy where it's
exactly.
saying, oh, and I met him, he came to my office, but I don't know what's going on in his factory in this country.
Exactly. I mean, like, you've got a Cuban here. I wouldn't trust a Cuban. Like, and this is a Nicaraguan talking. You know, this is a Nicaraguan talking. So no, but jokes aside, every place has its own nuances, and culture really matters, and language also is super important. Like, everyone in my team speaks at least 2 to 3 languages. You need to be fluent. Why? Because, yeah, you can have the best translators in the world, but you're not going to get the real gist.
Exactly. That's true.
Right?
Yes.
Right? And that's the thing. And sometimes this is I think a flaw in the American culture is you're very glued to U.S. English language, and you don't realize the value and the richness that all the other cultures have. And it's not just like on the beautiful side of, say, like maybe the tourism, the culture, the history, but also on the illicit side, right? Like, there are places like in Japan where honestly a contract is a formality. You don't really need a contract in Japan because they're so like honorable and so true to their word that like if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. Now you go to a place like the Middle East, good luck. Like nothing, like everything's fair game. You know, it's all for like highest bidder. But it's understanding those little nuances that make or break a case. And that's really what we do. We specialize. And the focus is very boutique. So we really like to know who you are, what makes you special. Every business is different. Every person is different. Every founder, every vision. And being able to understand that and being able to act as an extension of you is pretty much like what we pride ourselves on.
So is it, when you talk about the cases that you deal with, is it to build a case? In other words, company suspects something's going on and they say, okay, can you build me the case so I can go after this person? Or is it almost, not an audit in the boring sense, but like, okay, I just want to make sure, can you just run through my entire supply chain? I just want to make sure that everyone I'm dealing with is above board.
So it's actually both.
Both?
So it's actually both. So the latter that you described is you want to be compliant, you want to make sure like there's nothing iffy, and usually you see that more with older, more mature companies of they've already lived bad experiences, they know they're operating in high risk jurisdictions, so they would just want to make sure that everything is above board and it's beyond your basic compliance check, right? And sometimes that even actually involves like physically going to a manufacturing plant and making sure there's no child labor, there's nothing that implies like forced labor, you know, things like that, as well as like anything from the outside that may like say like, hey, here are some red flags that we should dig deeper. On the, hey, I suspect somebody's stealing from me, I guess to like bring it down into perspective, we can have two situations. Is I have a former employee that I just realized like stole from me, and that usually tends to be on more the C-suite level, and you'd be surprised how often that happens, because C-suite is the one that tends to have a lot of power and authority.
Probably the least oversight.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that just goes into, you know, like a full-on like internal investigation of pulling the emails, pulling all the interactions, interviewing employees and stuff like that. And there's the situation where maybe the owner thinks, or somebody in the company that is high up says, we think somebody is stealing from us, but I'm not 100% certain. I have my like key people that I suspect. Can you guys figure it out? And in those instances, and this is part of the reason why you see owls in my website, is I can actually infiltrate somebody into the company, pretend to be an employee, just to actually catch those people in the act, but you will never know. Sadly, I can't do that anymore because, yeah, you're seeing me, but all my other owls can. I'm a little bit jealous of them on that front. But yeah, so those are kind of like the cases that we work on and on the spectrum. And I think it's always important to remember that most people are not bad, but for whatever reason, there could be a circumstance that just life-altering that puts people in an immediate need, and it's like, well, you know what, maybe I'll just grab a little bit and pay it back, but then they don't get caught.
Exactly, and they say,
so then why do I have to pay it back? Yeah. You know, and that's kind of
or they find it that was easier than I thought, and so maybe just take a little bit more, right? And before you know it, it builds, and now they're caught in a situation where they can never pay it back, or it'd be very difficult for them to pay it back.
Look, most cases usually start like little. Like, have you guys heard the anecdote of like the frog that you put it in boiling water? Like that if you throw it immediately into the boiling water, it jumps out. But if it's in cool water, you're slowly raising the temperature. Like by the time it's boiling, it can't get out.
Right. Yeah.
That's exactly usually how a lot of like say like these embezzlement cases happen.
How interesting.
So I'm curious about, I had a lot of questions, but you've answered them actually as you were going through, because I'm saying, how do you actually do the investigation? But so let's say you have to investigate a factory somewhere in Nicaragua or Colombia or whatever. Do you also send your owls there, or can you go there and interview people, and do they allow you to interview people and look around?
So it depends on what the client is looking for, right? Like, so we're a believer of first, like, let's like exhaust all the OSINT options, all the open source intelligence options, and whether it be satellite imagery, local reports, like local radio, you name it. And then if it's still inconclusive, or the client just wants a more resounding response, then yes, like we can go there, we can team up with local people. There's multiple avenues, but we believe first in doing like the digital side first, and then the boots on the ground, because usually boots on the ground is what escalates costs.
Of course, yeah. Of course. And I guess you can, I suspect you can approach let's say it's a factory, you can approach a factory, say, I'm looking to work with you, but I'd like to see your place. And of course, they're gonna show you the bad parts, but maybe there you get a feel for how they work. Is that?
So there's a couple ways of doing it. One, like, is what you just described. Another way is client already has a relationship with the factory, and maybe in their contract they have it that the client reserves the right to do a surprise inspection.
Okay.
And we can be that surprise inspector, and we
Okay.
show up without notice and just knocking on the door and saying, surprise, here's the letter, let us in.
Yeah.
And anything that we can catch. Sometimes maybe you want to do a couple of like surveillance a couple of days or a couple of weeks in advance just to see if there's anything iffy or shady before you actually show up.
Okay.
So there's multiple ways of doing it. And then you can also do what I like calling is like vox populi, like the voice of the people, of like just listening to the chatter around town and see what people say, right?
Yeah.
And usually the higher risk areas for forced labor are la zona franca, like the free trade zones, because there's a lot like less oversight, and even the local governments sadly and in a way encourage forced labor kind of behaviors because they want companies to be coming in.
Wow.
Wow. So you have to sometimes, you can't always rely on the local government to assist you in anything.
No.
You
No,
have
I
to
would
kind
I
of
would guess
just-
not in
yeah.
those places. Yeah.
No.
Not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you ask your Cuban government to assist
No,
you?
of course not. No. Everybody here knows that me and governments. I don't care who it is. I don't trust anyone. It's just the way I am.
Can't blame you. Your experience hasn't exactly been a positive one, living in exile.
Yeah.
But so what's the typical process when someone like first reaches out to you? So like new firm says, all right, I've heard about you. Here's the what I'm looking at. What's the typical kind of process when you're working with someone for the first time?
So usually we do an initial consultation, which is free, where they tell us what they think they have, and sometimes from that consultation we can say, you know what, it doesn't really sound like there's anything. We're happy to dig a little bit deeper and do an initial assessment, but if from the get-go we don't suspect anything, like it's almost better like not to waste your money, right? But if there is something, and it really depends again, like what we're talking about. If it's an external investigation, right? Like there's variations of things that you can play around with. If you suspect there is an embezzlement, we can do an initial assessment, but if there is truly an embezzlement, I don't recommend doing an initial assessment, because if you do an initial assessment literally is, let me go in, do things not as deep, just try to like cover as much as I can and say, okay, we believe this happened, but not really giving you that like conclusive evidence, and it's not actually pointing at like this person is definitely guilty. So what happens is, if for some reason you get sued or something, that initial assessment may come out and it's actually could screw you in the long term, versus if you do a full-blown investigation, actually get to the root of it, you know exactly how it happened, who did it, who are the guilty parties, and you have the ways of saying, this is what happened, these controls were not in place, blah, 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 we have now changed, we've implemented this. So, and you can even use that report like publicly to clean up your image should you need to.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So
I did have one other just quick question. Have you ever been in a situation where you go to a surprise visit and they tell you, no, you can't come in?
Yes.
Okay.
Most of the time they tell you no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we just say, call the client.
Yeah.
And they will call the client, and the client will be saying like yes, or the client is expecting us to send them a message by X time, and if they're not getting a message of us saying, hey, we're in, then the client is going to be calling them. So yeah, like there's a lot of communication and coordination, and you want, like, it's not like I'm going to show up to a random factory and do an inspection just for the sake of doing that. I can't do that.
Right.
I need to have client buy-in, and sure, if you're doing something shady, you don't want people in. So
Interesting.
so much that goes into
Wow.
it.
This is a fascinating work.
It really is a very interesting business. I'm even curious on how do you, with so in depth, how do you balance like the entrepreneur side, like that you're running a small business at the same time you're doing these other things?
That's a good
It's
question.
gotta be a piece of cake compared to the others, right?
No, I mean, look, I would say the entrepreneurial side is the most boring side because it takes me away from doing the fun things.
Right.
Yep.
But it's important, right? It's and I think being out here and being able to tap into UVA resources, Darden, the different like CBIC, for example. those have been great resources that I can talk to other entrepreneurs, other founders, and say, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. Can you give me advice? Has anybody lived that? And it's amazing just how many people can give you advice, right? And I think you just have to learn how to balance. And it's still a struggle. It's still something that I'm learning every day. I'm trying to be better. But it's, one, you got to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, like you're harming your business.
Exactly.
So that's super important. And then is you want to do the work, you want to train your people, not just to be as good as you, but to be better than you, so that you can blindly trust them to run an investigation. And then you have to have time to work on the business and like keep on doing kind of like all these like business development stuff, relationship building, and getting people to really know the brand and just trust you.
Yeah, what does that mean, especially with yours? I mean, trust factors in
big
throughout
time
the
here, right?
entire
Yes.
thing. I mean, it's, it's they have to trust you, right? Then you're helping them figure out who to trust that they're working with. You have to trust the people that you're sending to these areas. So it is so much that goes in. They have to trust, your employees have to trust you. It's like, all right, you have to send me anywhere, I'm going to die, right? But,
And they gotta trust that whoever it is that's not gonna pay her twice the amount. It's like, I'll pay you twice the amount if you don't say anything.
But it just
That's
to
where
show
integrity
you
comes.
Exactly.
That's where trust comes in so much, and the brand, and just having the community know, okay, yeah, this is what Alexandra does. This is how important it is, because it's in today's day and age, it is incredibly important. I mean, you do not want to find out. You don't want to find out after the fact, too far after the fact, that this has occurred and you're now in big trouble.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And it's sad, right? Because you want to trust people, but I think the best philosophy is verify then trust. Because at the end of the day, if particularly as a business owner, you've worked so hard, you've put your life and blood into it, only to have someone either from the inside or from the outside come in and try to crumble everything that you've built. Like, isn't it worth the investment of protecting that, like, that baby of yours?
Yep, keeping it safe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be a pessimistic person to do it. You can still say, just like we said, it's not that they're bad and terrible people. It's just that even good people can do things that are wrong and make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to go through life being, no, I don't try, everybody's bad. It's just a matter of like, yeah, I can be optimistic and see people in a good way, but I'm going to verify it.
Exactly.
To protect my business.
Well, listen, I mean, it takes a lifetime to create trust. It only takes one instance to destroy it like that, right? So if you're a company and you're worried about something, it's probably not a bad thing to say, I really need to find out. Because the last thing I need is somebody outside to find out, and then we're in trouble.
Now you're in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the other thing is people, like, circumstances in life change all the time. And I think a good practice as a manager, business owner, anybody in like a management situation is to know your employees, know where they are, what are their what are they concerned about, what are their worries, is something going on. And not because they're going to do something bad, but because the minute a person feels alone, they feel threatened, they don't feel safe, that's when that fight or flight mentality kicks in, and you can start seeing that dark side come out, right? So why not be like just human and care for your people and prevent that dark side from coming out?
That's hugely important.
Perfectly said.
Alexandra, this has been so fascinating. Before we let you go, if people are interested and they're like, okay, I really do need to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Shoot us a hoot so our email address is hoot, HOOT, at owlconsultancygroup.com, or you can call, text, WhatsApp to 786-742-6227. You can go to our website, owlconsultancygroup.com, or even reach out to me on LinkedIn directly. I'm always checking like my messages, so I'm always happy to sit down for coffee, a call, you name it. Always there to listen and just hopefully be able to help you out.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dan, for coming.
millón de gracias.
Millón de gracias. It's been so fascinating.
Thank you guys for having me. Muchísimas gracias, y ahora voy por mi cafecito.
Perfecto. Gracias. So that was a fit.
That's amazing.
You don't run into, let's just say, you don't run into a business like that every day.
No, not every day, yeah.
For sure. Couple shout-outs here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just shout-outs.
A couple shout-outs. Bill McChesney says, happy birthday, Judah, because it is our producer, Judah Whitcower's birthday today. So, Happy birthday to Judah. Vanessa Parkhill watching the show this morning. Judah's giving us thumbs up. He's like, thank you, Bill, for watching the show. Of course, always love Judah behind the camera. I Love CVille Network. All our great partners. Don't want to not mention them. Of course, Matthias, who's about to be on. A great partner here. Castle Hill Cider, Craddock Serious Insurance, Forward, Adelante, Charlottesville Opera. We just have so many great partners that we're appreciative of.
So it makes this possible.
Exactly, makes it possible. Always presented by Emergent Financial Services. So we just really appreciate all the people that make this possible. And let us bring on great guests.
Yeah,
like Alexandra, and like the two guests we're about to bring on now that we're super happy to welcome to the show. So without further ado, big welcome to Matthias. He is back as always. It's our, what do we do, a monthly chat with Matthias?
Check-in, yep.
Monthly check-in with Matthias. And this time Matthias brought a friend to monthly check-in. So we're really excited to welcome to the show Michelle Good of Intercoastal Mortgage. So, I mean, first thing to do is how you both doing, and then our audience, I think we know Matthias pretty well. We've been chatting with him. For those who haven't met you before, Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself and Intercoastal.
So I'm with Intercoastal Mortgage. I have been doing mortgages. I've been lending for 14 years. But it is really kind of my third career. I started out, I went to college to be a social worker. I did child protective services. I realized quickly that I was not made for that. So I stuck with what put me through college, and that was selling jewelry. And I did that for 14 years. And I was very successful in that. We moved to, and that was in Maryland. We moved to Central Virginia in 2005. My daughter was a year and a half old. And I thought, wow, retail is not a very family-friendly business, right? You work long hours.
Yep.
So I thought, what can I do to stay at home with my daughter, and make it a family? So I started working at a bank. I opened checking accounts, helped clients, customer service things, and I was quickly promoted to a manager. Where I learned how to do loans, and I did all sorts of loans, and that was before the 2007, like the downturn of the market. So I did purchase loans, I did land loans, I did bridge loans, I did a yacht loan. I think the only loan I never did was an airplane loan. So that was the only one I never got a chance to do. And then we changed gears, and I started focusing on small business lending. And for a hot minute, I left BB&T and I went to United Bank, and I was a small business lender and focused specifically on small business clients. And I thought, you know what, I really missed the retail side of it, like the connection with the consumers.
Yeah.
So I went into mortgages. I went back to BB&T and started lending full-time as a mortgage loan officer. So I've been doing that for a while. So I really love, I've always told people I've learned how to marry the two things that I love the most, helping people with like the social worker background, but also my love of numbers and puzzles, because every loan is different. Yes.
It's putting together a puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Well, as you may know, we do have a client that was struggling with getting a mortgage, and I gave them Michelle's number and name, and I tell you, they can't stop speaking about Michelle. I even got jealous that they spoke about Michelle more than they spoke about me. I said, wait, what's going on here? So they did, obviously, she obviously just did a great job, and I think the perspective was that she listened, and two, she came with a solution, because sometimes, I think most people think, here's the mortgage, okay, you're buying a house, how much money do you have, how much money do you earn, okay, yeah, you're good to go. No, but sometimes that's not as easy, right? So there are other ways that one can finally find a way to get that right mortgage for the right person, and so Michelle did a great job in that situation, so thank you.
Thank you.
That's pretty much my experience with Michelle, and explains why I love working with Michelle. She has this weird obsession with numbers. And I know it comes in handy, but I don't share that. Luckily, I don't have to. And working with Michelle really makes things very easy, because I know when I send customers or clients to Michelle, they're being taken care of. And every single number is being explained.
Yeah.
Because again,
Yes.
she's obsessed with numbers,
Yes.
which really helps. Because if you think about what overwhelms people when applying for a loan, how does it all work? What's
Yeah.
the interest? Explain to me all the numbers, all the conditions, and Michelle You just saw it yourself. She writes very long emails. She's obsessed with graphs and charts, and she explains it. There are no questions open afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I try to focus on what the client wants. Some clients really love a lot of detail.
Right.
And some clients really just want the highlights. So I think I can figure out, what works best for the clients and get the point across and make it easy for them. That's my goal, is to make it easy for them.
Well, and you work in real estate, right? So, when you first buy a house, right, there's that desire for finding that kind of perfect house, right? Which doesn't really exist, but that's, your first house is like, I got to find a perfect house, right? And I always tell a story that you buy a house and your wife says, oh, this is it. This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. And then the minute you move in, he says, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's like, I thought this was a perfect house. But anyway, you're buying a house, but then there's all the little details, right, that go on with buying a house, especially the mortgage is the one that gets people the most nervous because it's like, I need a mortgage to buy the house. But all the numbers that come with a mortgage, whether it be the rate, can you prepay, if I pay down, how much does that save me? How long is the mortgage?
Yeah.
There's so much going on that I think people then, that's the area that gets them nervous, just to have somebody that can, like you said, Michelle, some people want to get explained, some people's like, just tell me how much I have to pay on a monthly basis, please.
Yeah.
How much do I have to pay on a monthly basis? Oh, good. Okay, I can do that, and that's that, right? So, that's important. It's important to have that, and you have to have somebody that is personable, right?
Right.
And that can talk to people.
And that's the important part, right? We're operating on a local level, and we are personal. You can approach us directly. Let's face it, there are realtors that completely work online. If you wanted to buy a house in Charlottesville, you don't necessarily need to sit down with me in person. You have the internet. We all know those big names that we're not supposed to say here right now. And the same applies to the mortgage industry, right? There are internet giants that somehow can work on a loan for you.
Where it's like, just push one button and you got a mortgage.
Yeah. I guess it works somehow because we hear it, right? You can buy a steak at Food Line. Is it the best experience?
Yeah.
Different story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about working with Michelle. That's what I love about working for a small boutique firm. We actually take the time to sit down, oftentimes in person, in a coffee shop, for example, to talk about the needs. And then comes into play what Michelle just addressed. We can adapt, we can customize our approach based on the needs. Michelle just said, not everyone wants 7 charts to know where the market is heading. Some people just want the solution. But how do you know that if you don't meet the people in person? And that's why I like to work with Michelle and not with a big online lender, because something is missing in that.
And that's so important. I mean, we have in our business it's the same, and it's like when there's somebody new, I always tell them, please come to our office, or I'll meet you, but I want you to get to know us, and I want to get to know you, right, before you become a client, because that's so important, just to meet people and get to know them, get to understand them, learn more about them, and see how you can help them, as opposed to like, we'll do a quick Zoom and we're out of here. It's just it's just not me. It's nice to have that relationship, I think.
It is, and it probably gives you also an extra comfort as the realtor to say, yes, I have people that I know and can trust, like Michelle. It's not, because I would imagine it's probably not too infrequently that you're working with someone and the client's going to say, okay, we're ready with this house. Where do I go to get the mortgage? Or something like that. And to not just have to say, well, here's the list and I don't really know,
No. So what really matters sometimes, and you will confirm that probably, is having a relationship with someone, because then that person can be trusted. If I were to send my client to a lender that I have never dealt with before, how could I with confidence say that the loan that you are and the customer support that you're about to get will be the best? I don't know it, which is why we work with trusted professionals, and that's why I'm happy that Michelle is here today, because she is one of the trusted professionals we work with. Again, it's so much is about communication, and
Yeah.
communication establishes trust, right? And you just said it yourself. You operate on a local level. You want to meet the person first before you talk about business. Establish trust, and again, that's why it's so important that we both live in the area.
Yeah.
We know the area.
And I
Can
think we
you-
both do business based on relationships. I know when I'm talking with clients, I build that relationship first. I do a lot of explaining of why. And I think with mortgages, that's what's the frustrating part. You know, give me your bank statements. Why? Right? So when we explain the why, that makes it more comfortable. And Matthias knows I always have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, sometimes a plan D, right? So as I'm talking with the client and building that relationship with them and asking them all the questions needed for a mortgage, then I can build that plan and come up with the best option for them. And I always share that with my realtors too, with Matthias, yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense. As in reality, it's kind of like your food line example. In other words, yeah, you may be able to go somewhere, press a button, and supposedly get a mortgage in 10 minutes, right? But the moment something goes wrong or is complicated or plan A doesn't work, now you're all alone because your primary contact is a computer screen that really doesn't speak to you.
No. All it said is no.
Yeah, it had a lot of information
Why?
to get you to click
Yeah.
the button, but it really didn't have a lot in terms of, oh, the button said no and a big red sorry, and now I have nowhere to go. I have nothing.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to proceed. Whereas with you, Michelle, it's like, okay, I'm working with you, so if it is a little more complicated, if there is, you have to navigate that
Yeah.
labyrinth,
Right.
you actually have someone who already knows your situation, knows you, and is willing to actually help you navigate
Yeah.
the labyrinth and get out of the other side.
Yeah.
Right. And with those big online lenders, good luck getting them on the phone, for example. Good luck getting a response when you need it. And sometimes when you need information, might not be in the time between 9 and 5.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry that I do this, but Michelle sometimes answers the phone on Sunday evening,
Sunday evening,
She's there,
10 o'clock
she's
at
available.
night.
right?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes this, it's a matter of time. It's
Yeah, well, I think and it also goes back to my retail days, right? Like you work when you need
That's
to
right.
work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
absolutely. I'm curious, because I know, obviously, as a realtor, it makes sense to know the area, be familiar with it. What would you say are some of I'm curious on the mortgage side to live in the area where you're working and to know it well. How does that help on the mortgage side?
Well, it helps because I know the area. I can get a feel for what's going on, especially when we're talking about how long they're going to live there. If you're going to buy that house, are you going to keep it, or especially being in the UVA area, are you going to keep it as a rental property down the road? Let's talk about that. How is that going to help you? So I think all of those, and then helping them navigate, a closing company, a title attorney, help to pick those things out too. Just getting, again, relationships,
Yeah.
or financial advisors. When I see that they have a lot of money in a bank account, you really need to make that money work for you. So it's more than just the mortgage. It's really building relationship. And the biggest compliment I get is when my clients refer me to a friend or a family, or it's a repeat client. Like that's the biggest compliment that I can absolutely
Yeah.
get.
Absolutely.
That's when you know you did something right.
Yeah.
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 Because I would imagine, especially in that line of business, it may be a repeat client. That means they remember you sometimes from several years
Yeah,
back.
yes.
It may
Yeah.
not be, it's not exactly like, oh yeah, 2 months ago I worked with you on a mortgage and now I'm selling and buying a new house. It's usually like, I had such a great experience
Yeah.
that 3 years down the road, I'm calling you and only you again.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
that'd be a
it-
great feeling.
One of my favorite things is getting pictures from clients once they move into the house, pictures of their pets and that they've made it their own. That's so exciting to me. And I do feel like my customers, my buyers are more friends. I mean, I think I told you before, I have over 1,000 contacts in my phone because once I talk to you, you're in my phone. And, if you call me, I know exactly who I'm talking to, who's calling.
You know who they are. You know who
Yes.
for sure. Absolutely. I'm just we chat with this Matthias a lot, like because we've talked, I think, about favorite places in Charlottesville, things to do, things to see. What are your kind of top things you like to do in several places to see?
So I love the wineries, the breweries. My husband and I will take the motorcycle out and hit wineries and breweries. That's our fun, honestly.
You have
Just
separate
getting
motorcycles or?
No,
okay.
I don't want to drive. I just want to ride and
Just
enjoy
wanna
the
ride.
scenery.
Okay, I'm just curious.
And what's your favorite winery?
Right now, so I live in Fluvanna County. Right now, my favorite one is Hardware Hills in Fluvanna County. We only have two. And this couple just bought the winery about 2 years ago, and they are just great people.
Wonderful.
That's
Wow.
fantastic. And so you know all the outlying regions too, so it's not just Charlottesville,
yeah.
but the whole
Yeah, I cover-
area, just like Matthias. Yeah.
Yeah, I cover Charlottesville, City of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Nelson County, Fluvanna County, Buckingham County. So I know all the outlying areas as well.
Yeah, which are
Well, and Augusta County.
And Augusta
Waynesboro.
County.
And
Yeah,
Augusta.
Waynesboro,
Yeah.
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 That's an up-and-coming area.
Are you seeing the same? I know we've talked with Matthias that's definitely growing, and
Yeah.
the beautiful spaces that are out there.
Yeah.
It's definitely something to.
There's a lot of growth in that area.
Really, there is.
But same with Fluvanna. I
Same
think it's
with
the
Fluvanna.
fastest growing county in Virginia.
It is.
Fluvanna?
Yeah.
And you sit right in the middle of it.
Sit right in the middle of it, yeah.
Is that because it's, now Fluvanna is closer to Richmond, am I right about that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's halfway to Richmond, and it's
Okay.
close to the interstate.
Right.
So
Yeah.
in between the urban areas of Charlottesville.
Yeah, so where I
Richmond.
live at Lake Monticello, I can get to pretty much Richmond, Charlottesville, and Waynesboro all within 30, 40 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah,
That's a nice little advantage, little spot
Yeah.
there.
yeah.
To be out, you can see everything. So I'm out of curiosity. So I know, because obviously there's the referral piece that we do, and just knowing that you have someone to trust. Does it help also to have good rapport? Like, are there times where you need to communicate back and forth with each other? Like, okay, here's what the client's going through on the mortgage side. Here's what the real estate side looks like. And what are the benefits of having that rapport? In other words, to say from the client's perspective, it's great that my real estate agent and my mortgage know each other,
Yeah.
and to communicate with each other.
Well, yes, I agree with that. It goes back to what we already spoke about, having a relationship, trusted relationship, knowing where the strengths in that professional lie. There are certain things we cannot talk about.
Right.
For example, if we're working on a transaction together, the financials are none of my business.
So yeah,
That's why I work with a lender, and she's taking care of that part. But obviously, we communicate. Just things that are not being shared with me, and vice versa. But it's really about knowing and trusting that other person in order to provide the best experience for the client, which is what matters at the end of the day.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll work together, and if we have a pre-approval and, they want to change something up, buy a house that's a little more expensive, then, we might have a little conversation about that we can do that, but it's going to change the rate maybe, because that's important for you to know on the contract, so.
Exactly. So many
Right.
key pieces
Yeah.
And
that come into play.
Michelle talked about having a plan A, B, C, and sometimes D.
Sometimes.
It also, depends on the actual subject, on the property
Yeah.
that we are looking at. And if she wants to look at a certain type of loan, she has to check in with me if that house would qualify for that. Is it in a
Right.
specific area? Is that loan actually applicable or not? And so there's a lot of conversation, a lot of forth and back
Yeah.
in order to pinpoint the best path forward.
Exactly, which is so key, because you have the proper kind of segregation between information that's not shared, but then you have the advantage of being able to communicate and say, hey, I have this idea, would this work? But only the real estate agent would be able to assist you in finding out that information. So it's instead of just saying like you're two totally different people that never met each other, never talked with each other, some of those big mortgage lenders, they're not going to make that call. They're not going to say, oh, let me see if this property is in an area that might qualify you for this, and talk to you. They're going to be like, here it is, take it or leave it.
No, of course,
okay,
yeah, exactly.
You don't
Yeah.
qualify for the basic, generic package. I'm sorry, that's how it is. So it's good to have that, because really it's sometimes that collaboration that can generate an idea that maybe nobody would have thought of on their own.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the nuances of the area that you live in.
Yeah.
which is just so key.
It really is, because, Crozet is very different than Waynesboro, right? So,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah,
You
you
look
had
at totally different ideas and properties and
yeah.
Valuations, right?
Valuations,
Because that's so important on the
appraisals,
mortgage, right? What the valuation is, and because I suspect the bank, if it's a bank, right, or whoever does the appraisal, will take a look at that area, and somebody might say, no, that house is not worth what you're buying it for. So now there's a challenge there for either having to put more down payment or,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes on,
And that would be a conversation I would have with Matthias up front. Do you think this house is going to appraise for the contract price? If not, what's our plan B?
Yeah,
And how can we make that happen? I always look at things at how can we make it work,
yeah.
Which
Which is so, and it's always great as a client to have that in your corner.
Yeah.
Because in other words, I think people expect, I think that's part of people's trepidation. You expect your realtor to somewhat be in your corner, like, okay, they want to make it work. But sometimes I think people have sort of a fear that the bank is really not there to make it work. It's like you try to go into the process thinking, they're going to find some reason to not want to.
Well, the bank wants to figure out how it works for them.
Yeah, exactly.
If it doesn't work for them, they don't care.
Exactly, but it's nice to know you have someone in your corner and say, all right, let's figure out how to make this work for you.
Right,
Yeah.
because we work with very, very specific clients sometimes. And not everyone is looking for the suburban single-family house.
Right.
Sometimes it's an investor, for example. And then we're looking at a distressed property all of a sudden. What type of loan would be possible there? And when clients ask me, I have to say, sorry, I am not a lender. Can you please talk to Michelle? And then it's really about what loan is actually an option for them.
right. And giving them the best options. I always tell my clients, I don't want to have to hide from you when I see you in the street, right? I don't want to go around the corner. I want to make sure I'm giving you the best service and doing the best that I can for you.
And it clearly shows.
It does.
Just the repeat customers and when people, like Xavier, refer people, it's like we get.
Yeah.
It's always great to, as like
is,
the
of course,
financial
yeah.
advisor to someone comes back, I had a great experience. Like, yes, yes, great experience. That's good. That's good. So, it's always fun, so much fun to have you on, Matthias, and it was great for me to meet you, Michelle, this
great
time.
meeting you. Thank you.
Talk with you. And I think I really enjoy this, and hopefully we can have both of you back and continue our chats and just see how things are going and what's new and keep it going.
Once a month.
Once a month, there we go.
Let's make it a team
There you
effort.
go. I can tell you it's the same day of the week, same place, same time. So it's actually very easy. It's not hard to remember.
You mean Thursdays?
Yeah, the day and the time and the place never change. So there you have it. So Michelle, people know, you can repeat it too if you want, Matthias, but for people who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way as well?
So I have a website, michellegoodmortgage.com. You can go there. It takes you to my website. You can always call me. And my email address, so mgood@icmtg.com. And my phone number, is it listed here? Do I give that?
Yeah, you can do it.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's 434-227-0117.
There you have it.
And she gives you a call back even on Sunday evening.
You love that, don't you?
That's a big part.
So call Michelle on Sunday evenings. That's
there
the
you go.
answer.
Thanks so much for having
no,
us.
Oh, thank you so
Coming
much.
on.
It's been a pleasure.
Always great to be here.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. So as we rotate here, I'll give a couple other shout-outs. Tiffany Harrell watching the show this morning. Sarah Jones-Monceau. Andrew O'Shaughnessy. John Noel. Rosalia Tronzaro, I think from New York.
From New York.
From New York.
All the way from New York.
All the way from New York is watching us this morning. So thank you all for joining us. It is always a pleasure as we rotate
Maybe she's
here.
looking at real estate in Charlottesville. You never know.
Never know. But it's beautiful because, of course, Rosalia, she definitely looks at that, but then I know she's a big opera fan as well. So
That's right, yeah.
She's a huge opera fan, Rosalia, so I think she always enjoys when we have on some of the amazing, talented people that we have been lucky enough to feature on the show, and I think we're going to add to that list of talented individuals this morning on the show.
For sure.
We are very excited to welcome to the show this morning Daniela Mack. She's Mezzo-Soprano and soon to be masterclass teacher, in addition to other amazing performances that we're going to talk about. And then she's joined here, of course, by Emily Hughes, Mezzo-Soprano, and part of the Emerging Artist Program right here in Charlottesville. So
I want to know what they're singing. I just want to know what they're singing. I mean, we got 2 mezzo-sopranos here. Just kidding.
So it's really great to welcome you both to the show this morning.
Thanks for having
us. So, I mean, tell us, I always love to do like a little intro. Tell us each about yourselves and kind of what was your first foray that got you interested in not just singing, but in opera?
Yeah, so I was lucky to grow up with a father who played an instrument. He plays cello and was a big opera fan. So I grew up listening to opera. And my parents tell me I was just always singing, just like in the crib, just singing to myself. So I think I always had a real interest in singing, and I got started doing music theater as a kid, which is what a lot of people, I think a lot of opera singers start by doing music theater as a kid, because that's, accessible and there's roles for children. And I did that, and then because I was exposed to opera from a young age, I always was interested in it, and as I got older, I kind of felt that my voice lended itself well to that, and that's how I decided to make it my career.
That's awesome. How about you, Daniela?
Very similar, actually. My parents exposed me very early on to classical music in general. My dad was the classical music lover, but they took me to the ballet, to the symphony, to the opera. My first opera was La Traviata, a college production actually at UT Austin, and I was 7 years old, and I just fell in love with everything. The spectacle, the costumes. I remember going home after that experience, and I was very, very shy as a kid, so I would never have done this in front of anybody, but I locked myself in my room and just started making sounds that I thought were operatic at 7 years old. But I started really as a pianist, so I started piano lessons at around 5 years old in Argentina. And then I moved to the States when I was 6 and continued with piano through high school. And it was my piano teacher, actually, who kind of noticed that I liked to sing. I think my parents told him as much. And so the last about 15 minutes of every lesson, when I was a preteen and teenager, we would spend singing musical theater tunes and boleros and, whatever he would bring, I would sing along with him. And it was he that told me that I should actually take with a legitimate voice teacher. And so I started that at 15 and never looked back.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow, that really is.
What a beautiful journey. And the beauty of doing piano, Anthony, is that sometimes all the accompaniment you need is
well,
you probably
I was
don't need
never
any,
a brilliant pianist, but yes, I mean, it's the foundation. I mean, I have 2 kids, and my older daughter, who is now 8, is in piano, and she has an ear for it. She's quite good, coming from a family of musicians, but she wants to venture off into something else. She wants to maybe play the drums, and I'm like, you have to, lay down the foundation with piano, and then we can talk about whatever else you want to play or sing or whatever.
Anything but the drums.
Anything but even drums.
So Daniela, it is obviously you have and continue to be a world-class mezzo-soprano. You just did, I think, San Francisco Opera. There was a new opera about Frida Kahlo and Liero.
That's right.
Which, what's it like to go from that and now also to teach for the first time in master class?
Well, one of them informs the other. They both inform each other, right? Primarily, I'm an opera singer, a classical singer. I don't have a lot of, or I don't spend a lot of time in one place. I'm very itinerant. I go where the work is. And so I don't have the good fortune, honestly, to maintain a vocal studio, because as a student, you want your students to have continuity in lessons and to really have consistent instruction. And so, but I do, the occasional master class. I do, if somebody asks me to teach or to coach, I will do it, and I really love to do it. It teaches me so much about the way that I intellectualize the technique that I use, and how to verbalize that for other people is really informative too. And it's a way of giving back, feeding into this career that I love so much, and the next generation. If I can provide any words of wisdom to somebody coming up behind me, I'm more than happy to do that.
That's fantastic. Are you looking forward to, I know, upcoming in Charlottesville here, you're going to be doing that for Charlottesville Opera. Are you excited about it?
Yes, on Tuesday morning, actually. Yeah, I'm really excited. And actually, you are singing on that masterclass, which is kind of cool. I think I'm only working with mezzos on that day, which is actually really interesting for me because, you know, I've done within within my fach, within the repertoire that I sing, there's kind of a wealth of different things that I could, you know, potentially offer some words of wisdom on. So I'm excited to do that.
No, but Emily, for you, what's it like being in the program and learning from some of these master classes?
Yeah, well, this will be the first one I'm getting to sing on, and so I'm excited for that. And I think it's exciting for me because, like she said, you know, we share a lot of the same repertoire. So getting to learn from someone who has sung the things that I'm working on is really exciting. And also just watching the other master classes, so many different. There's like different kinds of careers, you know, to have, and just learning from people who are at maybe different places in their career, or each masterclass focuses on different things. There's so many facets to what we do, whether it's like the character of the story we're telling, or the vocal technique. So it's been really cool to see all the different advice that my colleagues have received in these classes.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm obviously, one thing is singing, but another thing is singing in a language that isn't your language. How difficult is it to learn something new in, you know, whatever it be, Italian or German or whatever the opera is in?
Yeah, it can be challenging. I think it's really important to try to learn to speak the language somewhat. I've spent a lot of time learning the main opera languages, which are Italian, French, German, and English, and more Spanish. But I think it's important, obviously all of us, we do translate what we're saying, and I think having an understanding of the text really helps actually with like the memorization and how you deliver the words. If you really understand what you're saying, it starts to make you know, it's not just a string of syllables. It's like it starts to actually take on meaning just the same way when you're memorizing text in English, you know, if you do that. Having an understanding of like where the sentence is going and kind of the meaning helps you internalize it more, for sure.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I would think that because, I mean, an opera is not like you just sing one aria and you're done. You're also singing the whole, you know, you're in the character and you have to act a part, and I guess that's a good point. Like knowing what you're saying is important. Otherwise, you're saying things like, "Am I supposed to look sad, happy, or I just killed this guy?" I mean, is this good or bad?
Yeah. Well, there's a difference too. I mean, between just communicating from the stage to the audience a general emotion, and really, actually, if as an audience member, if I get a genuine connection from the people I'm watching, it's because they understand the intention. They understand how to use the inflection in a certain language to communicate, ultimately, emotion, so that as an audience member, you get that. And so it's crucial. I mean, I was lucky enough in my youth and in my childhood to really spend a lot of time learning different languages. My parents really invested in that for me. I didn't know at that point what I was going to do as a profession and that it was going to be so helpful. But I do try to tell, whenever I talk to younger singers, to focus on languages while you have the time and the mental capacity to do that when you're young, because it can only help and it will only facilitate that communication as an artist.
Oh, absolutely. And what you're doing is just so amazing, because opera is one of those mediums where it's like film in the sense that you have to act, you become a character, but you don't have the advantage or disadvantage, but you don't have there is no camera zoomed in on you,
usually not.
Capturing the slightest side. So you need to convey emotion to an audience that is seated pretty far away from you and that might only see you. Like, they might only generally get an impression of what, and you have to do it through I guess, the voice and through the way you move and just the way you're into it. So if it's not really coming through, it would be very hard for the audience, I think, to really connect unless you're truly deeply in character, because they're not zoomed in on your face and they're not seeing you in close-up. It's always at a distance.
Well, I think audiences are very intuitive and very smart. And if you see somebody performing on stage, whether you're used to watching opera or not, whether even if you have never been and you sit there and you see somebody who's not fully invested, you pick up on that because it's an energy. It's not only about making a beautiful sound. And I think opera has this stigma sometimes. It can be seen as elitist, and it's not for me. There's a divide between audience members who maybe are not whose ears are not attuned or who haven't been before, they think, oh, I'm not going to try that. But really, when you have performers that are fully committed and that have been trained and that are really communicating something, the magnitude of this art form really washes over you. And so everybody can identify with that at that point.
Yeah. One of the things that I suspect is also a little challenging, though, is that, you know, as an opera singer, you have to have a great voice, right? It can't be just have a decent voice. You have a great voice.
Are you saying you couldn't do it?
No, I definitely can't do it.
We don't know. I don't know.
Trust me, you don't want to hear me. But to have that great voice, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person may be a great actor, right? So, you know, because like I said, I've been to like thousands of operas with my mom when I was young, and there were times where there were some opera singers where I said, they're not really acting, they're just waiting for that big aria, then that voice just burst out. It's wonderful, right? But it's a challenge. It must be really difficult to do both because, again, you know, some people maybe there's a great actor that couldn't sing to save his life, right? But there's some people maybe can sing, but being an actor sometimes may be difficult. So it's got to be a challenge to work on both at the same time.
There's an enormous amount of training, I mean, that we go through. It's a lifelong exercise and practice. But, you know, I think there's also, I don't want to call it a trend, but there's a difference between opera, you know, 30, 40 years ago and what was standard and what was acceptable as, oh, well, this is kind of good enough. You can just stand here and open your mouth. Whereas now, at least, you know, young artists who are coming up, they are really encouraged, if not forced into training all aspects of themselves as performers to cultivate their acting chops and to not just, it's not enough to just make a beautiful sound. And oftentimes that's not the most interesting thing about a performance.
True.
You do have to start with a baseline of a nice sound, right? But there's more to it.
I agree. I think you're right. I think opera has changed for the better in that sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we see it here. I mean, you don't see Charlottesville Opera. I mean, there's this good, you know, the performances are just energetic, and you really feel it. You get into the performances here. Daniela, I mean, I gotta ask, this being today Mañana, so we got Cubano, and you are from La Argentina. How would you say, because you've been on, I think Latina, it's like Latina Mag, is it just called Latina Magazine, or it's like
Latina Style?
Latina Style, there we go, Latina Style. How would you say that, you know, just the beautiful, rich Latino culture and of Argentina in particular has influenced you as a mezzo-soprano?
Well, I mean, it is such an integral part of my identity as a human being, and you know, what you see on stage is a lot of me and who I am, and so of course it's everything that I do is informed by my culture. I think what's wonderful now, companies are being more and more intentional in their casting, in their hiring practices. People want to see themselves when they go to the theater. They want to identify with what they're seeing. And so companies are broadening their hiring practices, honestly. And so, you know, this season you touched on the fact that I did the Frida and Diego opera. The two operas that I did prior to that were also Spanish language operas. And just to turn around in the rehearsal room and see how many Latinx members of the company there are, both on stage and off stage, was really remarkable. And something that people are doing more and more, thankfully. And so, you know, our culture as Latinos, but our worldly culture, regardless of where you're from, it's rich. And opera is a huge combination of so much of life that I think all of our experiences have to be shared and deserve to have a voice on stage.
Can I ask you both, now in this, for example, in the master class, you'll be singing some songs, I guess, arias, I don't know what you call them. What are your favorite like songs to sing, you know, or of an opera or whatever, or anything?
Well, I'm going to be singing one of my favorites on the master class. It's from La Cenerentola, which is the Italian for Cinderella. So it's always fun to play Cinderella. The aria is called, sort of known as Non più mesta. and it's the aria she sings at the end of the opera when all her dreams have come true.
Okay.
And it's just full of joy and lots of also like coloratura, we call it. So that's like the really fast notes and a lot of high notes, low notes. It's really got it all, and it's just so much fun to sing because it's just full of joy.
Full of life, yeah.
And this masterclass is open to the public, and
Yes.
so please come and
really?
hear some vocal fireworks. But yeah, as she said earlier, we share a lot of repertoire. Actually, we sing a lot of the same things, and so that opera is by Rossini. That's also something that I love to sing. I sing a lot of Handel, early music. And also contemporary music, like the Frida y Diego was a premiere. So it really just, whatever, it's kind of a silly answer, but I think a lot of us identify with whatever we're working on in the moment is our favorite thing because we invest so much of ourselves into it.
I think that's and I don't think it's an unusual thing at all. I remember, Tchaikovsky's one of my favorite composers. I remember when you read like Tchaikovsky's like letters and each new thing he's working on, this is the best, everything I wrote before is awful, it's terrible, this is fantastic. And you guys, it says it about everything. Just as an artist, I think even when you're in music, the thing you're working on becomes your favorite, and he was just so extreme that then everything else before was terrible. It was like, how do I write that? So I think it's part of just really getting into it, and there's the beauty and the richness of opera, that there are so many beautiful songs and beautiful performances to play that it's hard even for an audience member to say like which is the best.
Right.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
There are so many. And if you're asking, because now you're both here in Charlottesville to do the masterclass, how have you enjoyed just the experience, the time in Charlottesville and being with Charlottesville Opera?
We've been here longer than
So this was my first time being an emerging artist with Charlottesville Opera, and it's really been great. First of all, just like such a supportive environment, and also just getting to work with, we have, if any of you have seen, productions, we have the principal artists that are doing the lead roles, and then the emerging artists fill in all the other roles and also are covering the lead roles. So we really get to learn a lot from watching the folks in the principal roles, seeing how they work, and they're people that are further along in their careers. So watching them has been really inspiring. And then we're also getting training. We've got coaches here, wonderful coaches, and so we get some training, and we get to do concerts and master classes like the one on Tuesday. So lots of performing opportunities, lots of experience, just kind of getting our feet wet with the repertoire in a company and forming a relationship with this company and this town, which is really a wonderful place to be, I think.
Terrific.
Well, and I've only been here, sadly, a couple of days, so I haven't explored quite anything.
So really, first impression right there.
The first impression. But no, I mean, it seems like a lovely, vibrant place to be, and there's a different energy being at a company with an emerging artist program, just a different excitement about things. And there's a lot of buzz around Tosca, and so I'm excited to spend the next couple of weeks here.
Yeah,
for sure.
we're excited to have you here.
Absolutely.
So this has been so much fun. Before I let you both go, your freedoms, it's different than with the company, like where can people get in touch, but anything you want to say about where people can see you next or listen to you next, or your websites, or anything you want to share for people to follow you, go for it.
Sure.
Well, first I should mention the masterclass on Tuesday, where you can hear me sing and you can see Daniela teach. So that's on Tuesday at 11 a.m. That's the 11th. And it's free and open to the public, so everyone should come. It probably just will last.
And where is it being held?
Oh, the Presbyterian Church, the First Presbyterian Church,
Okay.
which is
First Presbyterian,
downtown. Yeah, it'll be great. That's the next thing that I'm doing performance-wise, and then we have the Tosca performances. Of course, there's no mezzo role in Tosca, but I'll be in the chorus, and Daniela's husband is directing, and Alex Schrader, and that is July 14th and 16th at the Paramount Theater.
Yep.
And you can find me at emily-hughes.com, or also on Instagram at EMIHughes16.
There you go. And
Beautiful.
Daniela, how about yourself?
Me, so I have a little bit of a break. You can see me on Tuesday if you come here in town. But my next engagements are in Boston in October. I have a Beethoven 9 and then a LA Opera,
Oh.
a repeat of Frida y Diego. And you can find me. I have a website, danielamack.com, or I'm on Instagram, Daniela Mack Mezzo, Facebook, Twitter, all of that good stuff.
Fantastic. All Beethoven.
Wonderful.
nine.
Yeah, really.
I should probably go up to Boston just for that. Oh, well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you
Absolutely.
both
Thank
here
you.
and
Thanks
talk
for
with
having
us.
us.
Just always love, just learning more about just this beautiful, beautiful thing that is opera. I don't even know what you could call it. It's art,
Opera.
it's music,
That's
it's
it itself,
dancing,
right?
it's everything. It's
Yeah.
just opera. It's its own beautiful thing, and just always love just talking to people who are just in it with so much talent. So
Yeah.
really,
Thank you.
both so much.
Wish
for
you
doing
all the
this this
best,
morning.
both of you. Yeah.
Yep.
Look forward to hearing you.
Yep. And so check out this coming Tuesday, which is indeed the 11th, Tuesday the 11th.
At 11.
11. So super easy. To the masterclass at First Presbyterian, and then, as Emily mentioned, Tosca July 14th and 16th. Be sure to get your tickets. You're right, your husband, he's coming on next week, actually. We're going to be talking to him. He's the director for Tosca is going to be coming on, so check that out on Today Mañana next week. But buy your tickets to the event. Don't wait. That'll be like
Don't wait, yeah.
only a
Don't
few
wait-
days.
don't wait till next week.
Yeah, the 13th is one day in advance, so I would say just don't buy your tickets now. You don't want to miss out. You definitely don't want to miss out on that, because it's going to be an amazing performance. It's an exciting opera, and they're great performers.
It's a great
all
opera.
around,
It really is.
that are coming here.
It's
to
missing the
Charlottesville.
Mezzo-Soprano, but
I know.
I gotta take
I take it up with Puccini, but he's not
Yeah,
around.
he's not
So always a pleasure. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you for
on
having
the
me
show
again.
this morning. Thanks to our audience for just all your great comments and questions. It's fantastic. We did have a comment from Jeannie that came in after Michelle left, that she was having a bad lender experience and was going to lose a family home, and she went with Michelle and thought of an idea, easy transition, and now she owns her dad's pride and joy.
Beautiful.
So Michelle helped her save a family home. So that's exactly
That's
what we're talking
wonderful.
about, the great people that are here in Charlottesville. So great guests today. Next week, also some fantastic guests are going to be joining us. We're going to be joined by Chrissy Muniz from Good Times Only, Virginia. She's coming back. Remember, she had
I remember her. I remember her.
the silent disto. Then Brennan Gould, President and CEO of Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, to be joining us,
Okay.
as well as Charlottesville Opera. We'll be talking to the director of Tosca is going to be joining us to talk about that. So just another fantastic show lined up for you next week. Just always appreciate all our audience members for your great comments, likes, and shares. Xavier, thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Always fun. Thank you, Judah Whittower, behind the camera on his birthday.
Happy birthday,
Helping us
Judah.
out, so happy birthday, Judah. Big thank you, of course, to Emergent Financial Services for presenting us, as well as our amazing partners at Charlottesville Opera, Craddock Serious Insurance, Matthias Realty, Castle Hill Cider, and Forward Adelante, the premier Latino networking group here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week. But until that time, as we like to close that out on the show, hasta mañana. All right, fantastic. Great job. Great job.